On the surface level, the movie Moana, or Vaiana as I know it because I'm from Europe, seems to be a beautiful story with an amazing final message. And partly it is, and this is something that I want to make very clear. It is not my intention at all with this video to have somebody stop liking the movie because of the things that came up that I'm going to talk about. Because even given what I'm about to say, the parts that are beautiful and amazing about this movie will still be there, regardless of how incoherent and disconnected other parts may seem. The way I like to think about it is that the things that I'm critical about really don't seem to fit the concept or the initial idea they had for this movie. And so I kind of think of the characters in a different way than how they are portrayed. Hi, my name is Hane and I have recently started a channel here on YouTube to talk about some philosophies I'm thinking about and also about the comic I'm writing, which is based on these philosophies, so it kind of all ties together. The reason I want to talk about this movie, and today I'm just picking out a few of the things that I observed. There are more, but I don't want to make this video too long. Many things that happen throughout this movie deserve a closer look. Why? It's because they are normalized and they shouldn't be because they are, at times, even disruptive and violent. I'm going to give myself another shot here at explaining this because I think it's the core of why I'm doing this and it's important and we don't have to go deep into it, but basically some things shouldn't be normalized because we wouldn't want to see people behave that way or behave ourselves that way towards others, because that would make life worse for all of us. And at this point in the original video, I'm just explaining that I already made a long video about this movie back in May, and that for today I'm just talking about some of the points that I included in that video back then. It would also be very difficult to watch. I guess I should just say Moana the whole time since I'm recording this in English, but I kept forgetting, so we will have to go with Vaiana. Also, please take into account that there probably will be spoilers, so I hope you have seen the movie already or that you don't mind. So let's get into it. Without further ado, let's get into it. The Rooster is kind of a fun side character in this movie. He's incapable of doing stuff that he should be able to do, like eating, keeping himself safe. The thing about the Rooster is that the main joke is him either falling down or hurting himself in some way, and then also getting grabbed by the throat. With respect to falling down, I see two things. One is that it can be funny when somebody falls down or stumbles over something and then falls down and things like that. And then the second thing is that in these situations you would also check if the animal in this case, but if it's a person, you would check if they are okay and if they haven't hurt themselves. But here we only see the one side, the first one that I've mentioned, which is that this situation is used as a joke. And we don't have this sense of concern about the animal's well-being. In fact, throughout the movie, the Rooster doesn't just lightly bump into something. There are some situations that are pretty heavy, I would say, in the sense that some really concerning things happen to him. And this also happens many times throughout the movie. They use the same joke over and over again. This character has to be portrayed in a way that shows that he is clumsy and doesn't know how to do things, but then using this kind of device, we could call it, to get this idea across is not really necessary. You don't need to show the Rooster falling over and getting hurt so many times. I think the only value in that is the joke. What you could do instead is showing maybe this one scene from the beginning where the Rooster goes and sits on top of the fire and then Vaiana rescues him. And then also maybe the other scene where he doesn't realize that he's surrounded by water, and then he falls off the boat and Vaiana has to rescue him. But then you don't need all of these scenes where he's falling down again and again, because that's just repetitive. So the only value of that is for it to be a joke. And as I said, that's not the way you should treat animals. I'm missing the part where somebody comes and looks after the rooster and makes sure that he's fine, like when he got buried in the sand because the whole boat fell on him. And we know that Vaiana does look after him, but because this type of thing happens to him so many times throughout the movie, then I would also need to see the other side of somebody taking care of him many times to balance out the other side. But of course, it doesn't really make sense, because if you're going to balance it out, you're also not using this joke over and over, because you realize, because the character is just getting tossed around in this movie at this point. The rooster gets grabbed by the throat throughout the movie. Vaiana, I think she does that 1 or 2 times, and then it's justified because she was in a hurry, she was in danger, and she wanted to take the rooster with her, and then she just grabbed him from where she could. But the main person that grabs the rooster by the throat is Maui. The main person isn't the best way to say it, because it only happens, I think, 2 times. But then it's not for any good reason. And the thing with Maui is that he's a demigod. So there is one big question for me, which is, why would a demigod not know how you should treat animals and all living beings for that matter? He seems to have wacky values, not only concerning the treatment of animals, but also in general. And this is kind of confusing to me, because why would a demigod not have good values in general? And I don't really understand that, because I would think that a demigod, no less, would have to know the world and how it works well. And so I would think that he already would know some basic things like what ethics are. But I don't know, maybe that's just me, and where do ethics really come from? I would think that it's basic knowledge. We know how we should treat animals and that this is not the way it should be done. But the movie doesn't show that this isn't supposed to happen, and therefore it is normalizing this behavior, because it is showing this behavior just as any other normal thing that we would do in our life. If something is normalized, it just doesn't call our attention as something that we're not used to see would. And so if it doesn't call our attention, we're also not going to do something about it or think about it. Maui treats Vaiana very poorly, to say the least, during most of the movie. He talks to her condescendingly. He says, "I thought you stayed in the village, kissing babies." He says, "You're what, 8?" He throws her into the water. He picks her up by her head multiple times, throws her into a cave and then locks the door, calls her names. He calls her princess. He says, "If you wear a dress and you have an animal sidekick, you're a princess." He says, "Enjoy your beauty rest." He calls her buttercup. He calls her chicken. He even attacks her emotionally by questioning her worth. He says, "The ocean's straight up cookie dukes." He says, "You're the chosen one." He betrays her, a number of things. I feel like what the screenwriters wanted to do is to have this character behave poorly so that the stakes would be raised, so that it wouldn't be very easy for Vaiana and him to achieve their goal or Vaiana's goal of giving Te Fiti her heart back, so that the movie wouldn't be over in a second. But the problem is that they have this character change by the end of the movie without having him go through a transformation process. The problem with that is that they are giving you an example of a person who will treat you well as long as they are friends with you, but if they dislike you, they could very well go back to treating you very bad. And I know that happens in real life, but why it doesn't make sense and it shouldn't be normalized is because you cannot really trust somebody like that, because how they will behave just depends on their mood. They don't really have values, and so they won't be able to think, okay, even though I no longer like this other person, I won't betray them, or I won't treat them badly, or I won't talk about them behind their backs or something like that, because I don't do these things. These are my values. These are the things that are important to me. And so Maui, he doesn't have this kind of values, and he could at any moment, at a whim, go back to the behavior he was showing in the beginning. I think accepting this kind of behavior as if it was normal can make us disconnect from our instincts, and so we won't notice that when somebody shows this kind of behavior in one situation, they are likely to show the same type of behavior in another situation too, because this is just the way they think, and so this person may not be trustworthy. Vaiana, or Moana, on the other hand, doesn't have this personality. She is kind-hearted, she treats people and animals well, but when we see her interacting with Maui, something happens that calls my attention a lot. Instead of responding to the way he behaves according to what we would believe are her values, because in the beginning of the movie we are shown some things that give us this idea of who she is, she starts to kind of respond to Maui in the same way that he is acting. When they are on the boat and she has already asked him several times to help her get the heart back, and he says no again, she then resorts to saying that he would be regarded as a hero if he does that. Here she is speaking for everybody when she says that, and in reality it is made up because she can't know if everybody would think that way about him if he does that. In any case, it is not truthful when you speak for somebody else, because you are not in the mind of anybody else, and so you can't know what anybody else thinks. And so she manipulates him by using a desire that he has to make him do what she wants him to do. And it backfires pretty hard as well, as we can see afterwards, because after shaking hands, the first thing that he does is try to throw her into the ocean again. So he's immediately betraying her. But not only that, he will keep treating her badly. He will start calling her names and other things. And so we can clearly see that this manipulation is having its consequences. Now, there's an interesting debate because, of course, the main goal has to be met. It is very important that the heart of Te Fiti be returned. And you could say, okay, she did it to achieve this goal, and so there's a good reason for her to do this. But I think it is part of the mission to do things the right way. In fact, I do think that generally not behaving according to ethics and values does backfire, even though we might not notice it right away, or we might not connect what happens to us to our past behavior. One of Vaiana's main responses to Maui's behavior is that she repeatedly hits him with the oar. She also pulls on his ear, which is confusing because I just said oar. She puts her face very closely to his. She takes the banana he's eating out of his hand without asking, and stuff like that I will put up here on the screen. Here she realizes that the sight of the heart makes him uncomfortable, and so she shoves it into his face for no reason. She laughs about him and lies to his face about him having a shark head, and when he finds out anyway, she lies again. This is the infamous "you wanna throw me off the boat? Throw me off" clip. At least that's how I know it now, because no matter how bad someone feels, that still doesn't justify them being violent to anybody else. And you definitely shouldn't tell people to treat you poorly to make them feel better. Also, this is Vaiana's boat. Keep that in mind. But if somebody treats you in a way that you disagree with, should you then go and treat them in a way that you would also disagree with? Because if somebody else treated you that way, you would disagree with that. Should you do that in response to what the other person is doing? Or should you have values that say, look, I just don't treat people this way, and so my response is going to fall within the limits of how I think we should treat each other. Again, I do understand that the plot requires conflict, but what I am here to say is that you can portray conflicts without having anybody cross the limits of the behavior that they would agree with. Where I would draw the line is at attacking the other person. Or it's even not the same thing using insults generally because you want to say you feel like saying a strong word, than using an insult for saying something about the other person. So saying you are this or you are that would be an attack against the person. They could also have disagreement about where to go because each one wants to go a different place without Maui having to try to lock her up in his cave. Because if you think about it, what he's doing is very concerning behavior here because he doesn't know if she will be able to get out. And from what I can gather, there's neither food nor water in this cave. So I don't know how he thought she would be able to survive in there. And maybe that's a little harsh and there in fact was a well inside that cave, but it's concerning that we aren't shown that part. We aren't given an explanation of why that is something that somebody that has a certain level of awareness would ever do. There are several really beautiful things in this movie, and as I said, even though I see the questionable parts, and in fact I like to analyze them because something about it calls my attention a lot and makes me think a lot about ethics and life and how it all works and how we could improve how we behave and think and use it to our and everybody's advantage. So yeah, I'm very interested in this kind of topic. The final twist of this movie, the realization that Teka and Tefiti are the same being, I like it so much because it explains what a monster really is. And that is somebody that is missing a key part of themselves. Not somebody that wants to do harm to the world for whatever meaningless reason. The relationship with her grandmother is also very beautiful to me because it connects the young and the old people, and the grandmother also understands and supports Vaiana. The music is gorgeous, and I love the scenes where we see Vaiana's people sailing. There's also a deeper theme with Vaiana because she absolutely loves the sea. She wants to be in the water every time she gets. And ultimately we can see how what she loves connects to her purpose. Because she loves the sea, she is the best candidate to going on this mission. That will be all for this video. Please like and subscribe and ring the bell if you want to, and I will see you in the next one.